groups. And Sandra's signature work is Pain to Purpose. Sandra, welcome back to the show.
So good to be here with you, Kat.
Oh, I'm excited to have you here, and I'm really excited to talk about this topic today about anxiety. I think it's a big one going on in the world, and
Yes.
And I know that your work can really support people moving through that or navigating it. Maybe we can jumpstart by you sharing any thoughts you have on anxiety and how it's affecting maybe the collective or the big picture before we dive into the individual.
Yeah, I think that for those of you that are watching and are from the United States, let's say, anxiety is running rampant, probably all over the world, but I'll just specifically speak to the United States. We wake up to the news. For those of you that participate in watching the news, I to help my own anxiety, chose years ago to limit my access. But I have avid people in my household that tell me what's going on, even if I'm not searching it out. But school shootings, mass shootings, the economy, the discussion of bank failures, recession, that is enough discussion right there that if you weren't carrying anxiety in your body, you're probably going to pick it up vicariously just from, and I'll say, the ethers. It's as if we're in a soup. We're in the soup of the energy. And I'll just say the word, the collective. So that is often where we become very unconscious of the anxiety that is impacting us, because we think it is someone else's problem. It's someone else's experience, and that starts to impact us without even being aware of it. That is in addition to whatever is happening in your own life. So, and we've talked on lots of different topics. I'm a dreamer, so I'm kind of like, I just want to keep going with like the fun. And I hit my own aspects of this where I woke up in the last couple days and just felt this intense, struggle within my body, and knew that feeling was something that I used to live with all the time. Not something that I necessarily had been experiencing. And I had to start asking the question, like, what's going on? Is this mine? Is this something else? And a bit for me, it was a bit of the both and. It was specifically some things that were happening in my life, some little T traumas that were like coming back, some of the remembering, some of the past, some of the forward projecting. But this is where the news that can come in, we can have anxiety because of what we've experienced in the past. We can also have anxiety of projecting what's going to happen in the future. And so there's a time element that's associated with anxiety. And in my work with the Enneagram, I know that 3 numbers are in the present, 3 numbers are oriented toward the past, and 3 are oriented toward the future. And yet we can all be in all of those, like what's happening now, what's happened in the past, what's going to happen in the future. So anxiety can come from many different sources, but what I'm really passionate about is, how do we become aware from this is the embodiment part. How do we become aware in the body where we're holding it? Because this relationship with anxiety is within and it's between. And anxiety has a component of a relationship to self. It's the pain that we cause from within, aka health issues. And it's also the pain that gets created in relationship with, which then starts this snowballing of my anxiety creates in an environment that I create more issues, that turns around and gives me more anxiety because how I'm relating to others, how they're relating to me. And so this is why we literally are in a swimming pool, because we don't stand in isolation.
I love that you shared that. And, we don't stand in isolation. We are relational beings. And even if we are isolating by ourselves in our house, we're still energetically affected by what's going on in the environment around us, the people that we're connected to, even if they're not in our physical space. So I appreciate that. The other thing you mentioned, or you said a lot of things, and I'm not going to recap all of them, but our relationship to anxiety, which is really a pivotal way of looking at it, because you also said my anxiety, and so many of us identify my anxiety. I have anxiety, and then we can over identify it. And when you also said sometimes it's not ours that we're carrying in our body. So right. I think understanding what is going on collectively, and you described some of it beautifully, especially here in the United States, or in the Western world, things are really rocky in a specific way for everyone. There's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear, and many people are feeling it. People are feeling the inflation, the money, shooting, so many things. And I know I've learned to change my relationship with anxiety and the words that I use, because I was someone who was riddled with it. Like I had so much, and it's a passionate topic for me to talk about, because there isn't one way to address it. There's many ways, but I think, to your point,
right,
really understanding what's going on around us, is one of the first ways. And then what's going on inside of us, and what, like you said, what is our relationship to it, and how is it affecting me? Can I ask you a personal question more? You touched on it.
Yeah.
How has, we just talked about the collective and the bigger picture. How has anxiety really affected you personally? Is there anything you'd be willing to share? And you don't have to.
Yeah, no, this is a passionate topic for me. I am a family recovery specialist, which the qualifier means I have a family member in recovery. And I've walked this walk in recovery specifically because, a lot of family members that have a loved one with a substance use disorder, we're trying to control the situation. And the more out of control we are, the more anxiety that we can lend. And the very person who has substance use disorder, it's like 80%, there's a co-occurrence. So there's a mental illness that's associated with the substance use, aka maybe it's bipolar, almost always depression, anxiety. So you're actually creating this. Again, think about, you're living your life in this swimming pool. Like, this person already has a lot of anxiety in themselves. And again, I'll use the Enneagram for a second, just to bring that in. Anxiety, there's three different personalities. One is oriented toward, because they're planning ahead through the head, anxiety. Three of the personalities, it's shame, because they're processing through the heart. And it's like, how am I received by others? Through the heart. So shame. And the other three, through the body, it's anger. Now, even all those three are coming from sort of different places, they can all create their own anxiety. So someone who's trying, and I've watched this even with my husband, who's a body type, there's anxiety that's building because they're trying to hold their body back. This anger's building up. And we're all taught as children, that be nice. So you're trying not to spew on other people. But what happens is, if you start bridling all that back and it's not going anywhere, there's anxiety. There's shame. If there's shame, is going to create anxiety. And of course, fear, which is in the head, is creating anxiety. So when you start to understand yourself and say, well, I'm a head type, so I'm always future thinking. I'm going to be, let me back up. Assertives are future thinking. Not all head types are future thinking, but they're planners. and they're trying to solve through the head, which that's the part that's creating a lot of that anxiety, is to say, one, am I picking up the anxiety of another? And two, how am I dealing with it? How am I processing this through? Or am I creating the anxiety through my own thinking? And when you can stop that part of you that says, ooh, I'm creating this. So let me give you an example. This is where that's sort of within. Just today, because I'd said this anxiety was starting to come, I went out to a shop and I had a meeting. And so I'm going, okay, I need to go, and someone's talking, and I walk up and to say, like, how much is this? And the two people, and then we start this conversation, and this one lady is very, very energy conscious. And later, as we get into this pretty deep conversation, we start talking about going to Egypt and like all these energy things that I'm interested in. And she said, why did you come so forward? She goes, you invaded, she basically said, you invaded the space. That is the unaware Sandra who was holding this anxiety. And I became unconscious. So I went back into default pattern where I went assertive, and she felt it because she's very sensitive too. So 9 times out of 10, I gave her a sense of my anxiety by me coming in on her. And this is why I say it's a relationship of anxiety within. How is it moving through your body? How are you holding it? And how is it coming outside of you? So when stakes are high, family member. So I have a passion for nurturers, mothers, nurses, teachers, anyone in the caregiver sort of place. They're feeling with their heart. But what happens when they get so full? How are they the very people that they care so deeply about? How is their anxiety unconsciously impacting the very person? So the third level of awareness is, how does the other person perceive themselves in the presence of you? So if I have somebody who feels like they are like overblown by people, well, my assertive energy just blew in, and she's like, I mean, without telling me, in archetypal language, her victim came out. She was like, her victim was like, you're coming in on me. Like I was victimizing.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? That reconcile.
All energetic, right? Just
all energetic. There was no words. We had a nice conversation. She's very aware of energy, and so am I. So we switched our dialogue into energy talk. And it was like, of course, there it is. And of course I apologized. But that's what I am passionate about, is bringing that up to the surface, that the very thing that you're great at is also sometimes the very thing that unconsciously you can do things that will not be to anyone's best advantage. When I lead people, when there's a group and I need to lead and I need to take charge and I need to hold the energy and have the strength and be the leader and knock it out, that's when that assertive energy is an asset.
So what I'm hearing from you is that sometimes that energy is not an asset. Like it's that know thyself, that discerning.
Yes.
When should this come forward in a positive way? When should I kind of tamp it down? And what is going on inside of me? Really? Is it mine? Is it someone else's? Is it the right time? And like, if we get in our head about it, it could be like overwhelming and even cause its own layer of anxiety. But, it's really this awareness piece, like becoming aware. And, when you talked about the 3 types and the anxiety and the anger and a third one, but I was like, oh, that used to be me. And I grew up in a house with that. And it took me, it's about a decade ago, I was in a coaching program and I really understood that the anger and the irritability that I felt was actually just a different layer of anxiety and how it was coming out. Like, I think a lot of people think of it as just fear, and it's not. It can manifest in different emotions. And, you know, when what you were saying, like you went to, like I was envisioning you at a shop, like with a shop owner, but this level of impatience too, because you wanted to, you know the price. And I could feel that. And how many of us are like that? Like, we're so impatient and this rush of anxiety because we don't get what we want when we want it, because we live in this culture of immediacy and right now, instead of just taking a breath and being present and being okay with the timeline of what's happening. You know,
That's right.
overall.
That's right.
So how can someone do that? Like, you know, do they always have to do a lot of deep inner work, or can it be a little less complex to really learn to manage or tap into the anxiety in our body? Like, what would you say about that?
You know, there's no one right answer.
Okay.
So some people need to process it through language. They need to come at it from a perspective of understanding. I'm making sort of a generalization right now, but I'm kind of getting a little bit of a hit for myself, that what I often see for, let's say, a feeling type, they aren't always right off the bat wanting to go into the emotion of it, because that's already where they are. They're already deep feelers. So they're trying to make sense of something. And this is a generalization, but there's other types where it's almost all starting with embodiment work. So that might be, for those who don't know what that word means, it literally is like saying, if somebody was telling you a story and like you can feel, right? Somebody's like living like, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this, you can start to feel like it's ramping. And as a coach, you just find a pause and say, okay, what part of you is saying this? So really get them to, and it's always guided differently. Sometimes, you know, it could be that, you know, what word lives there, right? So sometimes if somebody needs to have that more intellectual, sometimes it might be a color, sometimes it might be a feeling, but you're slowing down the story. You're slowing in more scientific way of speaking, you're slowing the chemical reaction, where it's just like firing. You're slowing it down enough to bring some awareness to what is. So no matter what practices we use, whether it's meditation, whether it's, you know, deep hypnosis, don't know why I'm saying that, but I had to say hypnosis, whether we're doing, you know, even yoga, okay? Like whatever practices we're using to get to the body, we're really coming to center, and we're really starting to get in touch to the what is, the present time. So most of us are living in the past or the future, and it's coming to presence and what's happening in the body right now. And that will look different for every person. For others, what's showing up is this, you and I talk about it a lot, Kat, but it's like, it's mother womb work. It's if a mother is holding her child's anxiety, there's usually some anxiety that the mother had about the child. Maybe there was, you know, regrets. Maybe there's, whatever the case may be. Maybe they're bringing their own to their mothering, to their care. And it's sort of reuniting that. So get the body to acknowledge the children and the mother in a very physical way. It's a very healing way to process shame, anger, anxiety, but it's very body centric. And a
Okay.
lot of this doesn't have to be words, like we can use words. Words are helpful. Words have frequencies, but sometimes words get in our way.
I agree. I want to ask you about that. Because from my experience, I'll speak from mine. It was always like, you need to see a therapist. You need to talk about this. You need to, get support. And yes, we need support. We need tools. From my experience and other people that I've spoken with about talk therapy, there's a time and a place, and it's limited, because if all we're doing is talking about it and coming from the mental body, we're not necessarily processing it fully, right? And
Right.
sometimes those words are triggering, and we're reliving the whatever situation it was that may have created the initial anxiety response that we have. And we're
Right.
not fully learning to not just manage it, but there's a lot of management of anxiety out there, but release it so it doesn't keep coming back. And I think that's what, of what I know of you and what you're saying, some of your work is very powerful, because we go in and we work with the body to tap into the anxiety and learn to release it. Is that?
Yeah. What's interesting is I love this little tidbit. It's a little bit more scientific, but the body does not recognize gain. And I learned this through a yoga instructor first. And then it started to apply to the body keeps the score, a lot of like trauma work. We don't, a lot of coaches, right? Like me too, I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. I'm all about joy. Like, let's have joy. Let's have freedom. Let's have joy. Here's the truth. Your body does not recognize joy and freedom. Your body recognizes the loss of constriction. And in the loss of constriction, we get freedom and joy. We build up to that. So we don't that's the paradoxical thing sometimes about healing is like, it's like, oh, all of a sudden, like all this, if you say a word and it's like, well, and then it's like, okay, sit with it. And all of a sudden it's a ball in the stomach. It's like, and even I, like, cause I'm clairsentient, I'll say, if they don't say it first, I'll say, what's happening in your belly right now? And then that awareness goes, oh, it's tight. And I'm like, okay, let's just sit with it. And all of a sudden this ball gets a little bit more loose. And then it may travel to the heart, might travel to the throat. It might all of a sudden feel in the head. And then you're just following that. And then before you know it, the whole body has come into more of a presence. So you're just allowing that loosening. And in that way, they'll usually use the word, I feel more peaceful. Do they feel peace? Probably not yet. Do they feel more peaceful? Because there's a loss of constriction. So the body doesn't see addition. This is my techie person. The body doesn't see addition. The body sees subtraction.
Okay. So that's why release work is so important, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
that's right.
Before we dive into that, let's expand upon constriction for people that might not be familiar with that word. Maybe I use a different word. I know another friend of ours that we collaborate uses yet another word. So when you say constriction, for people that are not aware of it, what do you mean? Like, what does that mean in the body or in this work?
Yeah, usually what that means is there's a grip. There's somewhere in the body, there's a grip, there's a tightening, there's a sensation. Now, I will say there is a certain Enneagram number, the Enneagram 2, their head will get foggy loyalists, sixes sometimes do too, but it's a little different.
Mhm.
That isn't like their head is doing this. It's almost like the head is like they're in the fog. Like
Okay.
they can't even see. So that's not quite the word constriction,
Mhm.
but the belly oftentimes for people will get like a tight, like your first,
Like,
second, and third chakra, your survivals, they'll get like really tight.
like I'm seeing knots when you say that, like
Yeah.
knotted up and tightness and
Yeah.
right. And one of our friends calls it resistance. I call it tension, call it constriction.
Yeah.
They're all similar words for the same thing, that we're knotted up and then the energy can't flow, right?
Yes.
And that's the anxiety. So if we're, from what you're saying, if we're learning to release and relax, we feel more peaceful, yet we're not necessarily living in a state of peace. And you said yet. So do you believe that people, when they follow this path and do this work, can really live with that feeling of peace if they so desire it? Because I know a lot of information out there, at least when I was experiencing the height of my anxiety, right? It's like, you're always going to live with this. This is how you are. Just take a pill, shut up, and be like this for the rest of your life. There wasn't some of the awareness that we have now, that we have a choice to shift it and change. Do you believe people can shift it? I mean, there might be gradients of it, but what are your thoughts on that, on the potential?
This is always one of those slippery slope topics. Because here's the truth, and I'll go a little high level here for a second. They did a research study, and the one thing that was common with all energy healers in general, was no matter what modality they're using, is grace. And grace runs on a whole different law of the universe.
Okay.
And grace can heal in an instantaneously. It can heal. And in an undescribable way. And anybody who is a coach who says that they're an energy healer, they are just a conduit. It's not coming from them anyway. Right. It's they're opening up and allowing something to come through them, which is grace. Now, this is my belief. The person has to have consent and will. Because what is a law of the universe is that whether you call it higher power, source, creator, source energy, it will never come in on you that you do not allow. It can't. That is a strict law of the universe.
You have to ask.
You have to at least have a willingness, and this is where it gets a little funky. Is that, and a lot of teachers, that what I believe is that you have this lower self and a higher self. And this higher self, if the higher self has had a consent, it's still possible. And that is why technically you don't have to believe. In my first healing that I had, I was curious, but I didn't believe. And it's usually experiential, where people go, I feel different. And so therefore there must be something. I can't explain it. There must be something. But why do some people heal more than others? That is a question I'll go to my grave with. I don't know the answer to that. There is no guarantee. Anybody who sits across from you and puts a guarantee on something, I'm going to question them. That's like a person telling you they're humble. Like, that's not, like, get really
let's get underneath that phrase.
Get underneath that. Like, what a good person is saying, I'm going to do the best of my ability. I'm going to have your highest, and I'm going to hold your highest intention for you. I'm going to pour all of me into your highest intention. And between the two of us, the probability of that healing gets higher and higher and higher. So I've seen it. I've seen where, because of this idea of grace, I often use something called triangulation, which is basically just, we talk about polarity. This is where anxiety comes from. It's the either or, either or, either or, either or. And so, the third reconciling force is, here's either, here's or, and this is the third reconciling force. So a person may not be able to connect, but a third source comes in. And that is something that they can connect to, they can believe in. Maybe that's a grandfather's love, a grandmother's love, like someone's unconditional, something that they can attach to that, and that allows that triangulation to start happening. That's a little technical, but the healings always come in different ways for different people because we're all different.
Right. But to your point, then it is possible. And of course, I love what you said too. There's no guarantees, but there is the possibility of not living with this constant state of anxiety, this feeling of riddleness, this always reactive state, right? We can heal it to some level. Like we said, some people don't heal, and that's a conversation for another time. And like that, why some people do, why some people don't, in any realm, not specifically anxiety. But if somebody tells you it's not possible, that it could never happen, I'm not in alignment with that. But
I'm not either. In fact, I named my company Envision because, and also the tagline's grounded confidence. So what happens with anxiety is we get very ungrounded, right? So we start being up here in the head, and decisions start get really hard. Discernment almost becomes impossible. And this is usually the very times when you need to be the most grounded and have the most discernment. If you're in the middle of a situation that's creating a lot of anxiety, those are the two things you really need in that moment. So, this idea of how do you stay present to what is, so not like la la land, this is not happening, present with what is, and hold the vision of the future. So put my hands, this is hope. So if you don't have hope, then you don't have a target. It's not escaping reality, but it's having that vision and saying, like, I see you. So any mother, any person, loved one that's like dealing with not only theirs or the other, I can't tell you how empowering it is to be able to visualize wholeness of yourself, visualize wholeness of your loved one, have a little movie screen. I mean, some people it's mantras, but it's like for me, because I'm visual, it's like a little movie clip of wholeness. And I've held that.
I love that you said that. So twofold. One, there's different ways to do it. You're very visual, so the pictures. Other people may be auditory or whatever. Absolutely. And mantras. And there's other ways. There's coming into the body, all that. But you're saying hold the vision, right? So hold what you desire, hold how you think it could be, hold the hope. And I am in alignment with that. But my question is, what if someone doesn't have hope that it could be different, or they can't even get to the picture, right, of what they're holding?
Yeah,
what would you say to them, or where would they start?
Yeah, well, that is where coaches come in. I mean, that's sort of the basis of a lot of my work, is to see the gift of what is there, because there's always a gift.
Yes.
And to shine a light on that part that they may not see, and they may not have hope. And it's to have, often if you get into that place where you lose your grounded confidence in your own ability. This is, I think, human nature. We start looking outside before we look in.
Good there. Sure.
Yeah, we start looking outside. Some personality types more than others, but we look out here. And this is where a good coach can come in, because it's not to say, or a healer, that you're always going to need them. They're just a place where, like, I'm going to elevate you up just enough that you're going to get your feet under you. And then I believe in you. Like, I believe. Sometimes we need somebody outside of us to say, I believe in you. I see what you've done in the past. There's no reason why the future is going to look any different than this awesome things that you were able to do. And we often forget our own capacities. Yeah. So that's that taking the flashlight and saying, I'm going to hold your hope for you, while at this moment you may not be able. If you're in family recovery, that it's so important for somebody to have gone before you. Or if, maybe you're going through a divorce, maybe you're going through a death, maybe you're going through, some financial times, like somebody to help bring an aspect of abundance. That's what we're talking about. Underneath this, it's abundance.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so re-tapping into ourselves, that feeling of abundance, this feeling that things can be different, that if we choose them to be, but then we have to reverse engineer it and find some guidance along the way, is what I'm hearing you saying. Someone who believes in us, someone that has actual tools and practical tools we can use as well to help shift it. I think, and this wasn't one of the topics for today, but some of what I've seen in the coaching industry over the last decade is that some people are selling hope. It's great, we all need it, but they're not showing you or actually giving you the tools or skills to get there. And it happens in other arenas too, but I'm just using this as an example. So if someone is looking for a coach or a guide or something, are there any things that they could look for when they're vetting that person? When they're vetting them to possibly work with them, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I'm going to bring in I'm going to bring a little bit of archetype work.
Okay, cool.
And this is actually something that gets hard to discern. So there is an archetype called the prostitute, and that is the guardian of faith. So I'll probably bring in multiple ones. So the guardian of faith, it's like, okay, are you having to sell yourself out? Do you put so much faith in the other person that they're telling you that they're going to give you faith in yourself, but are you really having to sell yourself out? Now, here's where it gets really tricky, because there's a lot of coaches that are charging a lot of money, and money is one of these things where it's very relative, but only you know if you're sacrificing to get something outside, if you're trying to get the power that you see in another person. So ask yourself, what are you buying? Are you buying their power? Or are you stepping into your own and believing in yourself? Because any coach that wants you to believe in them and not you, red flag.
Bingo.
Over and over. And the industry is full of people who are trying to make you feel like you can't do this. Something's wrong with you. You're going to prostitute yourself out. You're going to, go into financial debt at the hope that their power is somehow just going to flow right into you. That's not the way it works, because we are our own energy system. We only plug in truly to our own energy system. We'll lose our power to other people. We think we can take power from others. That is a lie.
Right.
You
I
cannot gain power from another person. You can only gain power when it's within, which is why the body's so important, because what the truth is, your energy system that's in your body, it's just you.
Mhm.
Your
Yeah,
coach doesn't hop into your body.
right. So that's why it's important to learn to go in to the body, like taking the time, like you said earlier, slow down, turn inward in whatever tool works for you. There's many. We're not going to hash those out or argue which ones work and which ones don't. We're all unique.
Yeah.
But the theme is to go inside a little bit and start to discern. And we didn't talk about this as much as I wanted to, but you brought it up a lot. And grounding, like grounding our energy so we can work with the trickiness of discernment, right? And the marketing that's out there, because of course it's not unique to the coaching industry. When you said that, and I'll sum this up, it's not your exact words, but they're making, lack of a better word, or manipulating or making people feel bad, feel like they can't, or playing on the heartstrings to get them to buy something, right?
Sure.
And that increases anxiety for a lot of people. I've got to get this thing, like this is the magic pill, this is the thing. I need this, it's going to fix me or save me. And that's not the truth.
Right.
No one's coming to save you. You have to go inside. Like the only way out is through, right?
Yes.
You've got to do the work in whatever way shows up and resonates for you. Is that, yeah. So Howard, we're going to have to wrap this up. Sandra and I would love to have you back or continue these conversations because I really wanted to dive into motherhood. I've got.
We'll have to do another one on motherhood.
All right. A grounding tip. Is there one simple takeaway grounding tip that you could leave for people if they are not feeling grounded? What could they do? Or where could they start?
Yeah, a simple one is where are your feet? And most of us don't think about our feet. Yeah. And I would say, and this is actually, I teach a bit Baptiste yoga. This is actually a Baptiste yoga move, but when we teach grounding from the bottom up, is focus on your big toe, like your toes. So you can take your toe, put your feet on the ground and lift all your 10 toes, which is actually a little harder than we sometimes think it is. And then place them down one by one.
That's hard.
It's going to be good for you from a physicality perspective because we lose balance when we get older. And a lot of it is around our feet. So 4 corners of the feet means, if you think about your foot, it's the 4 corners and heel, the ball of the foot, so the outside edge, find the outside edge, find the inside edge. If you can find your feet, you're automatically going to go into the body. So you've already become body centric. And you're going to drop energy that might be way up here in the head, and you're going to start dropping it. And just, and if you can then breathe, but I mean, even if just bringing awareness to your feet, perfect thing to do when you drive, right? Like you can just we often our foot's on the pedal, like, where's your feet? Like one time I was doing a meditation and the person was driving during the meditation, which I wouldn't suggest that, but she had great results because she found her feet while she was driving. So you don't have to necessarily be, you can do that anywhere at any time.
Find your feet. Love that. Find your feet and just, it drops your energy kind of into the body. So find your feet. That's our big takeaway. If people want to find you and not their feet, so you can help them further along, where can they find you, Sandra?
They can find me at Envision. It's ENN for Enneagram, ENNVISION. .net.
Envision.net. I'll also put it in the show notes. Anywhere else or any special offers?
We run rooms in Clubhouse, so check me out in Clubhouse. I often run rooms on the Archetypes, which is my work with Sacred Contracts, Carolyn Mace, archetypal consultant. And you can email me at envision, ENNVISION, coach @gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, Sandra, I, as you know, love talking to you. I always pick up little gems and tidbits, but I'm glad that you came back to the show. I really appreciate it. If someone is watching this and wants more Sandra, just on the creatrix.tv, you can flip back to some of the earlier episodes, maybe episode 8 or 9, February and April of 2022. So it's been about a year. So
Wow.
Thank you for being here. I know I can't wait to do more work. And like Sandra said, you can find her on Clubhouse. We do a lot of Clubhouse together with our if we're going to talk triangles or things with Kristen Lemaster, who's been a guest on the show. But we're here to support people move through their anxiety and other things that they need help with. So thank you for watching today. It's been a gift. Sandra, always a pleasure. And I hope people will search you out. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.